The stage lights were almost blinding as an old Filipino carpenter named Lolo Ben slowly walked out, his steps measured, his back slightly curved from years of labor. He looked so out of place among the flashing cameras and glittering crowd, dressed simply in a worn shirt and polished but old shoes. The judges studied him with curiosity, some with gentle smiles, others unsure what to expect. When asked about himself, Lolo Ben spoke softly, his voice carrying the weight of a lifetime. He shared that he had worked with his hands since he was a boy, building homes for strangers, crafting furniture for families, always giving, never keeping much for himself. His words weren't rehearsed or polished, they came from a place of honesty, and that quiet sincerity made the room lean in closer. The audience chuckled warmly when he admitted that he wasn't sure if he even belonged on such a grand stage, but that his granddaughter insisted he come because she believed he had a gift. He smiled faintly, almost shyly, as he said he wanted to show her that dreams never expire, no matter how old you are. For a moment, the theater was hushed, as though everyone recognized the bravery it took for this humble man to stand there. In that instant, he wasn't just a contestant, he was a symbol of every unsung worker, every grandparent who sacrificed, every dream put aside for the sake of others. Even before he sang a single note, the audience was already touched. They weren't watching a performance about to unfold, they were witnessing the opening of a story that promised to be about more than talent. It was about humanity, love, and the quiet strength of a man who had lived not for applause, but for the people he loved. When the music began, Lolo Ben gripped the microphone with hands worn from decades of hammering nails and sawing wood. At first, his voice was fragile, a soft whisper of melody that trembled under the weight of nerves. Some in the audience tilted their heads, unsure if he could carry the song. But then something remarkable happened. As he closed his eyes, the words began to flow with deeper strength, each note carrying the echo of years lived in quiet sacrifice. His voice wasn't flawless, but it was real, raw and overflowing with emotion. Every phrase seemed to paint a picture, of early mornings spent working under the heat of the sun, of sacrifices made so his children could eat, of dreams quietly tucked away so his family could live theirs. The auditorium grew utterly silent, as though the crowd feared even a breath might break the fragile magic that was building. The lights gleamed on his face, highlighting tears gathering in his eyes, yet he never stopped singing. Each verse rose higher, his voice carrying not just melody, but hope, pain, and love all at once. Even Simon Cowell, known for his stern composure, leaned forward in his seat, his usual guarded expression softening as he recognized that this wasn't merely a song, it was a confession of a life lived in service to others. By the time the chorus came, the room was no longer hearing an old carpenter sing, they were hearing the soul of a father, a grandfather, a man who had given everything without ever asking for anything in return. The audience's eyes shimmered with tears, and a deep stillness wrapped the theater. In that moment, it became clear, this was not just a performance. This was the sound of a life finally finding its voice. Halfway through the song, Lolo Ben's voice wavered. His throat tightened, the weight of emotion almost too heavy to carry. For a moment, it seemed he might stop, that the dream he had gathered all his courage to pursue would slip away. The crowd held its breath, the silence thick with anticipation. Then, from the audience, a soft but steady voice rose above the hush. It was his granddaughter, the very reason he stood on that stage. She had slipped out of her seat and, with tears in her eyes, began to sing alongside him. Her young, clear voice wrapped gently around his trembling notes, lifting him, giving him strength. Gasps of surprise echoed through the theater as the two voices blended into a harmony so pure and unexpected that it felt like destiny itself had written the moment. Together, they sang not just a song but a story, of generations bound by love, of a man who gave everything for his family and of a child who believed so deeply in him that she refused to let him fall. Lolo Ben's face transformed as he looked at her, pride and gratitude shining brighter than the stage lights. The audience, once silent, now leaned forward, some openly crying, others clutching their hearts as if to hold the moment inside forever. What began as one man's fragile performance had become a duet of love and resilience, a bridge between old and young, sacrifice and promise, past and future. By the time their voices soared together into the final verse, the entire room understood that this was no ordinary audition. It was a living testimony that dreams may wait, but they do not die, and sometimes it takes the hand of someone you love to help you finish what you started. As the final note faded into the air, a sudden hush swept across the entire theater. Then, like a wave crashing, the audience rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, shouting as if they had just witnessed something sacred. Golden light from the stage reflected in countless teary eyes, and the sound of the applause shook the walls. Lolo Ben and his granddaughter stood frozen, overwhelmed, holding each other's hands tightly as if to anchor themselves to the moment. The judges, too, were visibly moved. Howie with his hand over his mouth, Heidi wiping her eyes, Sophia smiling with both pride and tenderness. But it was Simon Cowell who surprised everyone. He leaned forward, his voice thick with emotion, and said, "This isn't just talent. This is love. This is family. This is everything." His words trembled as if pulled straight from his heart. Then, without hesitation, he reached forward and slammed his hand down on the golden buzzer. In an instant, the theater exploded with gold confetti cascading from the ceiling, shimmering like a rain of dreams finally come true. The audience screamed with joy, their cheers blending with the triumphant music that filled the air. Lolo Ben, caught in the golden storm, dropped to his knees in disbelief, tears streaming down his face. His granddaughter knelt beside him, wrapping her small arms around his shoulders, whispering through her sobs, "We did it, Lolo, you did it." For a man who had spent his life building homes for others, this was the first time the world had built a moment just for him, a monument of love, recognition, and triumph. And in that golden glow, it became clear, this was no ordinary victory. It was the rebirth of a dream long buried, finally given wings to soar. When the music faded and the golden confetti settled on the stage floor, Lolo Ben rose slowly, still holding his granddaughter's hand as though afraid the moment might slip away. His chest heaved with emotion, and tears streaked down his weathered face, but his eyes glowed with a light that hadn't been seen in years. The judges waited, the audience silent once more, sensing he had something to say. Taking the microphone with trembling fingers, he spoke not as a contestant but as a man who had carried a lifetime of sacrifice in silence. "All my life," he began softly, his voice breaking, "I built houses with these hands. I built them strong so families could have a place to laugh, to cry, to dream. But I never built anything for myself. Today, you helped me build something I thought was impossible." His granddaughter hugged him tightly, and the crowd erupted into cheers, some shouting his name, others simply crying along with him. Simon wiped his eyes, whispering, "Beautiful," while the other judges nodded with hearts wide open. Lolo Ben lifted his gaze, scanning the sea of faces before him, and with a smile that seemed to hold both gratitude and wonder, he said, "Dreams don't grow old. They wait. And when the right moment comes, they bloom, like today." The theater shook with applause, a roar that carried more than admiration, it carried love. As he and his granddaughter walked off the stage, bathed in gold and hope, the message lingered in every heart: it's never too late to share your gift with the world, and even the smallest act of belief can change a life. That night, the carpenter who had built homes with wood and nails had built something even greater, a legacy of love and inspiration that would stand forever.